The great hall on Nexus Prime was filled with voices from across the galaxy. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat at the long table, her hands folded carefully in front of her. She had been talking with aliens for 3 long years. 3 years of careful words and patient meetings. 3 years of trying to make peace work. Around the table sat the other delegates. The Zephyrians looked like tall birds with silver feathers and sharp beaks. Their leader, Kexthal, kept tapping his claws on the metal table. The sound made Elena's teeth hurt. The Keth Collective sent 3 representatives who shared one mind. They spoke in perfect unison, which made most humans feel uncomfortable. The Vorthans looked almost human, but their skin was blue and their eyes were completely black. Elena looked down at the papers in front of her. So many papers, so many agreements. Humanity had given up more than anyone else at this table. They had agreed to leave 12 star systems that were rich with metals and rare elements. They had promised to keep their military fleets small. They had even agreed to let other species help control the trade routes that connected the galaxy. Most humans back on Earth thought she had given away too much. Admiral Chen had called her 3 times just yesterday. He wanted to know why humans were being asked to sacrifice so much for peace. Elena always gave him the same answer. Peace was worth any price. Humans had learned this lesson the hard way during their own bloody history on Earth. The other species did not understand this. They saw humanity's willingness to compromise as weakness. They thought humans were soft because they talked about cooperation and sharing. They were wrong, but Elena hoped they would never have to learn how wrong they were. Kexthal suddenly stood up. His tall form cast a shadow across the table. When Zephyrians stood like this, it usually meant they were angry or about to make demands. Elena felt her stomach tighten. Something was going wrong. These terms are not enough, Kexthal said. His voice was harsh and grating, like metal scraping against stone. Humanity must give up more. They must surrender their core industrial worlds. They must reduce their population in the outer colonies. They must accept Zephyrian oversight of their military. Elena stared at him. These were not the terms they had been discussing. These were not even close to the terms they had been discussing. This was something else entirely. This was conquest disguised as negotiation. Those terms were never part of our discussions, Elena said carefully. She kept her voice calm, but inside she felt cold fear spreading through her chest. We have already made significant concessions for the sake of peace. The Keth Collective spoke in their strange shared voice. The Zephyrian proposal has merit. Humanity's rapid expansion has concerned many species. Perhaps it is time for ... limitations. The Vorthan delegate nodded slowly. Elena realized with growing horror that this had been planned. The other species had been talking behind humanity's back. They had decided that humans were becoming too successful, too widespread across the galaxy. They wanted to cut humanity down to size. Elena's communication device buzzed softly. She glanced down at it and felt her blood turn to ice. A message from Earth Defense Command. Priority 1. Emergency. She opened the message with shaking fingers. The words blurred in front of her eyes as she read them once, then twice, then a third time. New Geneva colony under attack. Zephyrian fleet engaged civilian targets. 40,000 confirmed dead. Unknown number wounded. Colony infrastructure destroyed. Requesting immediate military response, Elena looked up from her device. Kexthal was still standing, still talking about the new terms humanity would have to accept. He was demanding that humans give up their right to defend themselves while his own people were murdering human civilians. You attacked New Geneva? Elena said quietly. The hall fell silent. Kexthal's head tilted to one side, the way birds do when they are confused or pretending to be confused. I do not understand your meaning, he said. Elena stood up slowly. She was much shorter than the Zephyrian, but something in her movement made him take a step back. She held up her communication device so everyone could see the screen. 40,000 dead, she said. Her voice was still quiet, but it carried clearly across the silent hall. 40,000 civilians, men, women, children, farmers and teachers, and doctors and engineers, people who never carried weapons, people who trusted that this peace process meant something. The other delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some of them looked surprised. Others looked away. Elena realized that some of them had known about the attack and others had not. It did not matter anymore. Your fleets attacked during peace talks, Elena continued. While we sat here arguing about terms and concessions, your people were bombing schools and hospitals. Kexthal straightened up, his feathers ruffling. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Colonies sometimes face difficulties. Elena felt something break inside her chest, something that had been holding back a much darker part of human nature, something that had been keeping the peace through 3 years of increasingly difficult negotiations. New Geneva had children, she said. Human children who played in parks and went to school and dreamed about growing up to explore the stars. They trusted that adults were smart enough to solve problems with words instead of weapons. She looked around the table at all the alien faces, some confused, some calculating, some afraid. They were starting to understand that something fundamental had just changed. We came here in good faith, Elena said. We offered concessions, we offered compromise. We offered cooperation. We offered everything except our dignity and our right to exist in peace. She gathered up her papers and data tablets. Her movements were precise and controlled, but everyone in the room could feel the anger radiating from her like heat from a fire. Humanity tried peace, she said as she walked toward the door. We tried so very hard to make peace work. We believed that civilized beings could find civilized solutions to their problems. She stopped at the door and turned back to face the assembly. In that moment, every alien in the room saw something in her eyes that made them remember very old fears. They saw the look of a predator that had been pretending to be tame. Peace has failed, Elena said. You have chosen war instead. Very well. Now you will learn why humanity values peace so highly. You will learn exactly what we were trying so hard to avoid. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence for several long minutes. None of them spoke. They were all thinking the same thing, though. Few would admit it. They had made a terrible mistake. Outside the building, Elena walked quickly toward the human embassy. Her steps echoed in the empty corridors. Behind her, the other delegates were probably already calling their homeworlds, probably already trying to figure out how to handle what they had just unleashed. Elena activated her emergency communicator. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen immediately. Elena, thank God. Did you get the news about New Geneva? I got it, she said. Marcus, they planned this. The attack happened while they were demanding our surrender. This was never about peace. Admiral Chun's expression darkened. What are your orders, Ambassador? Elena looked out through the embassy windows at the alien city below. Beings from dozens of species walked the streets going about their normal lives. They had no idea that their leaders had just started a war that would change everything. Recall? All human diplomatic personnel, she said. Activate the defense protocols. And Marcus? Yes, ma'am? Tell Earth that humanity tried peace? We tried harder than anyone has ever tried. Make sure they understand that what happens next is not our choice. The communication ended. Elena stood alone in the embassy, looking out at the galaxy that had just declared war on humanity without understanding what humanity really was when pushed too far. 40,000 dead. The number kept echoing in her mind. 40,000 people who had died while their leaders talked about the importance of peaceful solutions. Peace had failed. Now the galaxy would learn why humanity had been so desperate to make it succeed. Admiral Marcus Chun stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface. The room was filled with screens showing star maps and fleet positions. Red lights blinked everywhere, indicating emergency status. Officers moved quickly between workstations. Their faces grim and focused. 40-8 hours had passed since New Geneva, 48 hours since everything changed. Admiral, The Senate has given us full authorization, reported Captain Sarah Kim. All defense protocols are now active. Number. Restrictions. Marcus nodded slowly. The politicians had finally understood what the military had been trying to tell them for years. Peace was wonderful when everyone wanted peace. But when someone chose war, you needed to be ready to fight back harder than they could imagine. Begin. Phase 1 activation, Marcus ordered. Send the signal to all hidden facilities. Across human space, things that had been sleeping for decades began to wake up. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, rocks that looked like ordinary space debris suddenly opened up like flowers. Inside were shipyards that had been built in secret over many years. The aliens thought humans were good at building cargo ships and mining equipment. They were right, but they did not understand what else those same skills could build. Lieutenant Torres approached with a data tablet. Sir, we're getting confirmation signals from all sites. Project Anvil is fully operational. Project Hammer reports ready status. Project Shield is coming online now. Marcus looked at the numbers scrolling across his screen. Ships under construction, weapons being moved from storage, personnel being activated from civilian jobs and transferred to military units. The aliens had thought humanity's military was small because that was what humanity had wanted them to. The truth was different. The truth was that every human colony had been built with defense in mind. Every mining station could become a fortress. Every cargo hauler could carry weapons instead of goods. Every civilian who worked in space had received basic military training. Humanity had learned from their history on Earth that peace was fragile, and war could come without warning. Sir, incoming message from Ambassador Vasquez. Called Communications Officer Davis. Elena's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired, but her eyes were hard with determination. Behind her, Marcus could see the human embassy being evacuated. Marcus, the other species are mobilizing their fleets, she reported. The Zephyrians are calling this a police action to restore order. The Keth Collective and the Vorthans are publicly supporting them. They think they're going to divide human territory between themselves. How long do we have? Marcus asked. Intelligence suggests they'll move within 2 weeks. They want to hit our major colonies before we can organize a defense. They still think we're weak. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not fear, but the calm that came before violence. He had felt this way before during the Mars rebellion 20 years ago. A feeling of knowing that talking was over and only action remained. Elena, get our people out of alien space, all of them. Diplomats, traders, tourists, everyone. I want every human safely in our own territory within 10 days. Understood. What about the colonies in disputed space? They're not disputed anymore? Any human colony is human territory now. Any attack on our people anywhere will be considered an act of war against all of humanity. The communication ended. Marcus turned to address his staff. Every officer in the room was watching him, waiting for orders that would shape the future of their species. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at war, he said simply. Not the kind of war we planned for, not the kind of war we wanted, but the kind of war that was forced on us by people who mistook our desire for peace as inability to fight. He walked to the main display showing human space. Hundreds of stars marked with blue symbols. Colonies, outposts, mining stations, research facilities. Millions of humans living and working across dozens of light years. All of them now threatened by aliens who thought humans would be easy to conquer. They attacked New Geneva while we were trying to make peace, Marcus continued. They killed children while their diplomats were shaking our hands. They have shown us what kind of enemy we face. Now we will show them what kind of people they have chosen to fight. Captain Kim raised her hand. Admiral, what are our rules of engagement? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. During peacetime, rules of engagement were complicated things designed to prevent misunderstandings and limit casualties. During wartime, especially this kind of wartime, they became much simpler. Total war, he said finally. Not against civilians, but against their ability to make war. We destroy their fleets, their shipyards, their military bases, and their command structure. We make it impossible for them to threaten human lives ever again. Across the command center, officers began implementing orders that would have been unthinkable just days before. Emergency construction projects went into full production. Civilian factories retooled to build military equipment. Research stations began working on new weapons and defensive systems. On Mars, the massive industrial complexes that had been building terraforming equipment suddenly switched to producing warships. The aliens had seen these facilities during trade visits, but they had only been shown the civilian production lines. Hidden beneath the surface were military shipyards that could build vessels, designed for one purpose: winning wars. In the outer colonies, miners who had been extracting rare metals for peaceful trade suddenly found themselves building fortifications and defensive positions. The mining equipment they used every day could also dig bunkers and tunnel networks. The explosives they used to break apart asteroids could also destroy enemy ships. Admiral Chun received status reports from across human space. The Kepler system was already transforming its cargo haulers into troop transports. The new Shanghai colony had activated its hidden defense platforms. The research station at Volf 359 was working around the clock to upgrade their early warning systems. "Sir, we're getting volunteer applications from every colony," reported Lieutenant Torres. "Everyone wants to join the military." "We have more volunteers than we can process." Marcus was not surprised. Humans had always responded to threats against their families by coming together. The aliens had not just attacked one colony. They had attacked the idea that humans could live safely in the galaxy. Every human now understood that their survival depended on making sure this kind of attack never happened again. "Process them all," Marcus ordered. "We'll need everyone. Engineers, doctors, teachers, farmers, everyone. This war won't be won just by soldiers." A new message appeared on his screen from Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha. "Admiral, we have movement in Zephyrian space. Large fleet formations heading toward the border systems. Estimated time of arrival, 10 days, Marcus nodded grimly. The aliens were moving faster than expected, but humanity would be ready. The sleeping giant that had been pretending to be a peaceful civilization was finally waking up. "Open a channel. To all human military commanders," Marcus ordered. When the secure communication network was active, Marcus could see dozens of faces on his screen. Fleet commanders, colony defense coordinators, special operations leaders. Men and women who had been preparing for this day even while hoping it would never come. "The enemy is moving," Marcus announced. "In 10 days, they will learn what happens when you attack humanity's children. They think they are fighting cargo haulers and miners. They are about to discover they have declared war on the descendants of the people who survived every conflict in Earth's history." He paused, looking at each face on the screen. These people would lead humanity's response to the greatest threat their species had ever faced since leaving Earth. "They wanted to see what humans do when peace fails," Marcus said. "We're going to show them. We're going to show them exactly what we are when someone forces us to fight for our survival." The communication network went dark. Across human space, the final preparations began. Soon, the galaxy would learn why humanity had been so committed to peace. They would learn what humans became when peace was no longer possible. The sleeping giant was awake, and it was very, very angry. Admiral Vexkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Talon of Victory. Around him stretched the largest fleet the Zephyrian Empire had ever assembled. 200 warships moving in perfect formation toward the Kepler Junction. This would be the battle that broke humanity's will to fight. The Kepler Junction was the perfect target. 3 major star systems connected through this single point in space. Control Kepler, and you controlled access to dozens of human colonies. The humans would have to defend it, and when they did, they would face the combined might of 3 alien civilizations. "Admiral, our scouts report human ships approaching," announced his tactical officer. 47 vessels confirmed, mixed classes. Vexkar clicked his beak in satisfaction. 47 ships against 200, The humans were either desperate or stupid, probably both. They had not learned their lesson from New Geneva. Now they would face complete destruction. Signal the Keth and Vorthen fleets, Dexcar ordered. Begin attack formation Crimson Wing. We will show the galaxy how quickly human defiance can be crushed. The alien fleet spread out into a complex pattern designed to surround and destroy the approaching humans. It was a formation they had used successfully against pirates and rebels for decades. No enemy had ever survived it, but as the human ships came closer, something felt wrong to Dexcar. Their formation was too organized, their movements too precise. These were not the panicked defenders he had expected to find. Captain Sarah Reeves commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the UES Defiance. She had been fighting in space for 15 years, ever since the corporate wars in the Outer Rim. She knew how to read enemy formations, and what she saw made her smile grimly. "They're using Crimson Wing," she reported to her tactical team. "Standard encirclement pattern. They want to surround us and destroy us piece by piece. Orders, Captain?" asked her weapons officer. Sarah looked at the tactical display. 200 alien ships moving to surround 47 human vessels. The aliens probably thought this would be over quickly. They were wrong. "Signal all ships," Sarah ordered. "Implement broken chain formation. Let them think they have us surrounded." The human ships suddenly scattered in what looked like panic. Some fled toward the edge of the system. Others seemed to be trying to hide behind asteroids. The alien formation moved to pursue them, spreading out to catch the fleeing humans. Dexcar watched with satisfaction as the human ships ran in all directions. This was exactly what he had expected. Humans were cowards when faced with real opposition. Their reputation for toughness was just propaganda. "Pursue all fleeing vessels," he commanded. "Do not let any escape. We will destroy them all and send a message to every human colony." The Zephyrian ships accelerated, chasing after what they thought were frightened enemies. The Keth and Vorthen fleets did the same, spreading across the system to catch every human ship. That was when the trap closed. The human ships that had seemed to be fleeing suddenly turned around. But they were not the same ships anymore. Cargo pods detached to reveal hidden weapons. Mining equipment transformed into military hardware. Ships that had looked like civilian vessels shed their disguises to show their true nature. "What is happening?" Dexcar demanded as his sensors registered weapon signatures that should not exist. The humans had not fled. They had positioned themselves perfectly around the alien fleet. Now, 200 alien ships found themselves scattered across the system, with small groups of human vessels attacking each isolated squadron. Sarah watched her tactical display with professional satisfaction. The aliens had taken the bait perfectly. Instead of facing 47 human ships in one coordinated battle, they now faced 47 separate engagements scattered across the system. And in each of those engagements, the humans had advantages the aliens could not have imagined. "All ships begin Phase 2, Sarah commanded. "Show them what we really are." The first alien squadron to die was a group of 12 Vorthen cruisers that had been chasing what they thought was a damaged human freighter. The freighter suddenly stopped running and turned to fight. It was not a freighter at all, but a heavy weapons platform designed to look like a cargo ship. The Vorthen ships found themselves facing firepower that should have required a much larger vessel. Their shields collapsed under weapons that hit harder than anything in their experience. Worse, the human ship seemed to absorb damage that should have destroyed it, continuing to fight with hull breaches that would have forced any alien crew to surrender. "Impossible," whispered the Vorthen commander as his flagship's engines exploded. "How are they still fighting?" The answer was simple, though the aliens would not understand it for some time. Human ships were built by people who expected to be outnumbered and outgunned. Every system had backups. Every weapon had alternatives. Every human crew had trained for scenarios where their ship was damaged, and they had to keep fighting anyway. Humans did not surrender when their ships were hurt. They got angry across the system. Similar scenes played out as alien squadrons encountered human vessels that refused to die when they should have died. Ships that kept firing when their weapon systems were damaged. Crews that found new ways to fight when their standard tactics failed. Dexcar received frantic communications from his scattered fleet. Reports of impossible human capabilities. Stories of ships that seemed to repair themselves during battle. Weapons that grew more accurate. The longer the fight continued. "Admiral, we have lost contact with Squadron 7, reported his communications officer. Squadron 12 is requesting immediate reinforcement. Squadron 5 reports their entire formation destroyed by a single human vessel. Dexcar felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career: doubt, fear, the growing realization that he had led his people into a trap they might not survive. "Signal all ships," he ordered desperately. "Converge on my position. We regroup and fight as one fleet." But it was too late for regrouping. The human ships moved like predators, striking at any alien vessel that tried to rejoin the main formation. They used tactics that seemed insane to the alien commanders but were perfectly logical to anyone who understood human psychology. A squadron of human fighters attacked a Keth battleship by ramming their damaged vessels into its weapon systems. The pilots ejected at the last second, but their ships continued on predetermined courses to disable the enemy's ability to fight back. It was a tactic that required accepting the certain loss of expensive equipment to achieve tactical advantage. No alien species would have considered such a trade worthwhile. Humans calculated it differently. Ships could be replaced. People could not. If destroying your ship saved human lives elsewhere, it was a good trade. The Keth battleship, crippled and unable to defend itself, was quickly finished off by other human vessels. The alien crew never understood why humans would sacrifice valuable military assets just to win a single engagement. As the battle continued, the aliens began to understand that they were not fighting an enemy they recognized. These humans did not follow the rules of civilized warfare. They did not preserve their forces for future battles. They fought as if this single engagement was the most important thing in the universe. Captain Reeves coordinated the final phase of the battle from her command chair. Her ship had taken damage that would have forced most alien vessels to retreat, but human engineering standards were different. They built ships to keep fighting until the crew was dead or the enemy was destroyed. "Admiral Dexcar is trying to rally his remaining ships," reported her tactical officer. 63 alien vessels still operational. Sarah nodded. The aliens had started with 200 ships. They had learned an expensive lesson about underestimating humanity, but they had not learned enough yet. "Signal all human vessels," Sarah ordered. "Final assault." And the remaining human ships converged on the alien formation like a closing fist. They moved with coordination that spoke of years of training and centuries of military evolution. Every ship knew exactly where every other ship would be. Every captain understood their role in the larger plan. The final engagement lasted only 12 minutes. When it was over, Admiral Dexcar's flagship drifted powerless in space, its crew broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. Of the 200 ships that had entered the Kepler system with such confidence, only 18 remained functional enough to retreat. Sarah stood on her damaged bridge and looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of the alien fleet. This had been their first real battle since the war began, and the message it sent would echo across the galaxy. "Send a signal to Earth Command," she ordered. "Kepler Junction secured. Enemy fleet destroyed. Human casualties minimal." The message would reach Admiral Chun in a few hours. From there, it would spread to every human colony and every alien intelligence service. The galaxy would learn that humanity had not been hiding their weakness during the peace negotiations. They had been hiding their strength. The sleeping giant was not just awake now. It was hunting. High Counselor Vex Thara of the Zephyrian Empire stared at the reports spread across her desk. Each one told the same impossible story. Human fleets were not just winning battles. They were destroying everything in their path. 3 months had passed since Kepler Junction. 3 months of defeat after defeat. The humans had not stopped to negotiate or demand surrender. They simply moved from system to system, methodically destroying every military target they encountered. "How many ships have we lost?" she asked her military advisor. 70% of our fleet, High Counselor. The humans show no mercy to military vessels. They destroy everything that can fight back. Vexthara felt her feathers droop with despair. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 300 years. They had been the strongest military power, feared by dozens of species. Now they were being crushed by humans who had pretended to be peaceful traders. What about the Keth Collective, the Vorthans? The Keth have withdrawn to their core systems. They have abandoned all forward bases. The Vorthans sued for peace after losing their entire outer fleet. The humans rejected their surrender. That was the most terrifying part. Humans were not accepting surrenders. They were not interested in territory or tribute or any of the normal goals of warfare. They seemed determined to completely destroy their enemies. Ability to make war. Admiral Marcus Chun stood on the observation deck of the UES Retribution as it approached Zephyr Prime, the homeworld of the species that had started this war. Behind his fleet stretched a formation of ships that represented everything humanity had learned about warfare over thousands of years. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender broadcasts from the planet," reported Captain Kim. "They're offering complete capitulation. All military forces disbanded. War reparations." "Anything we want?" Marcus watched the blue-green world growing larger on the screen. Somewhere down there lived the beings who had decided that human children were acceptable casualties in their political games. The beings who had attacked civilians while shaking hands with diplomats. "Any military resistance?" Marcus asked. "Negative. Sir, all orbital platforms have been abandoned. All ships have fled the system. There are no military targets remaining." Marcus nodded slowly. The Zephyrians were trying to surrender now that they understood what they were facing. But surrender was something you offered before you murdered 40,000 innocents. After that, you face the consequences. "Signal the planetary government," Marcus ordered. "We are not here to conquer. We are here to ensure this never happens again." The communication channel opened to show a group of terrified Zephyrian officials. Their leader, High Counselor Vexthara, stepped forward with her head bowed in submission. "Admiral Chun, we surrender unconditionally. We accept full responsibility for the attack on New Geneva. We will pay any reparations, accept any terms, if you will spare our people." Marcus studied her face on the screen. Fear, desperation, the look of someone who finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. 3 months ago, she had probably approved the attack on New Geneva without a second thought. Now she begged for mercy from the species she had tried to destroy. "Your military will be completely disbanded," Marcus stated. "All weapons manufacturing will cease. All warships will be turned over to human forces for destruction. Any attempt to rebuild military capability will result in immediate retaliation." "We agree to everything," Vexthara said quickly. "Please, our civilians have done nothing wrong." "Neither had the children of New Geneva," Marcus replied coldly. "Neither had the families who died while your diplomats were pretending to negotiate in good faith." He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "However, humanity does not make war on civilians. Your people will be safe as long as they remain peaceful. Your government will be restructured under human oversight. You will never again have the ability to threaten innocent lives." The transmission ended. Marcus turned to address his staff. Around him, officers who had spent months fighting an enemy that had shown no mercy to human civilians now faced the question of what to do with victory. "Sir, what are our occupation parameters?" asked Captain Kim. Marcus had been thinking about this question since the war began. "How do you ensure that an enemy never again becomes a threat without becoming the monster yourself? How do you prevent future wars without ruling the galaxy through fear?" "Minimum necessary force," he decided. "We destroy their military completely. We monitor their government closely. We make sure they understand the consequences of aggression. But we do not punish their civilians for the crimes of their leaders." Across the Zephyrian home system, human forces began the systematic dismantling of everything that could be used for war. Shipyards were shut down. Weapon factories were converted to civilian use. Military academies were closed. The entire infrastructure that had supported Zephyrian aggression was carefully and permanently removed, but schools remained open. Hospitals continued to function. Trade was allowed to resume under human supervision. The Zephyrian people would live, but they would live in a galaxy where their leaders could never again choose war over peace. On the bridge of a Keth, collective ship hiding in the dark between stars, Admiral Yexinin watched the reports from Zephyr Prime with growing horror. The humans were not conquering systems. They were remaking them. Any species that had allied with the Zephyrians was facing the same fate: complete military destruction followed by restructuring under human oversight. "Admiral, we have a transmission from the Neutral Coalition," reported his communications. "Officer, the Ethereal Communion is calling for an emergency peace conference." Yexinil almost laughed. A peace conference? As if the humans would be interested in negotiating now that they were winning. As if any of the species that had supported the attack on New Geneva had any right to ask for peace. "What do the humans say?" he asked. "They have not responded to." "Any diplomatic overtures, sir?" "They seem determined to continue military operations until all hostile forces are neutralized." Yexinin understood. The humans were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting to ensure that what happened to New Geneva could never happen again. That meant destroying the military capability of every species that had supported the attack. "Signal the fleet," Yexinin ordered reluctantly. "We withdraw to the core systems. All forward bases are to be abandoned. We cannot fight this enemy." The Keth Collective, which had dominated local space for 2 centuries through superior technology and coordinated tactics, was retreating to their homeworlds. The species that had perfected the art of shared consciousness in battle had been defeated by humans who fought with individual initiative and improvised solutions. Meanwhile, in Vorthan space, President Coulter signed the documents that formally disbanded his species' military. The Vorthan Republic had been the first to sue for peace after their fleet was destroyed at the Battle of Rigel 7. They had watched human forces systematically destroy military targets while leaving civilian infrastructure untouched. "The humans have accepted our surrender," Coulter announced to his council. "Our military will be disbanded. Our weapons will be destroyed, but our people will live." Some of the council members looked relieved. Others looked ashamed. All of them understood that their species had gambled their independence on the idea that humans were weak. They had lost everything. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the ruins of New Geneva Colony. 3 months after the attack, construction crews were rebuilding what the Zephyrians had destroyed. But the memorial garden in the center of the colony would remain exactly as it was. 40,000 names carved into black stone, a reminder of the price of failed diplomacy. "Ambassador, we have a message from Admiral Chun," said her aide. "The Zephyrian homeworld has surrendered. Their military has been completely disbanded." Elena nodded without looking away from the memorial. 40,000 people who had died believing that adults could solve their problems with words instead of weapons. Children who had trusted that the peace negotiations meant they were safe. "Any word on the Keth or the other allied species?" "The Keth are retreating to their core systems. Most of their allies have already surrendered. The war is effectively over." Elena finally turned away from the memorial. The war was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven that their commitment to peace came from strength, not weakness. They had shown what happened when someone forced them to choose violence over diplomacy. "Send a message to Earth Command," Elena instructed. "Recommend that we begin planning for the post-war galaxy. We need to establish new treaties, new trade agreements, new diplomatic relationships. But this time, everyone will understand that human patience has limits." As she walked back toward the rebuilt diplomatic center, Elena reflected on how much had changed. 3 months ago, humanity had been trying desperately to prove they could be trusted as peaceful members of galactic civilization. Now they were the unquestioned power that other species approached with careful respect. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity valued peace above almost everything else. But when peace failed, when someone chose to murder human civilians, while pretending to negotiate, humanity became something else entirely. They became the force that ensured peace would never fail again. The new Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime looked almost the same as before. The same curved walls, the same holographic displays, the same seats arranged around the central speaking platform. But everyone who entered could feel that something fundamental had changed. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked to her seat at the council table. The chair next to hers bore the emblem of the Human Federation. It was a permanent seat now, with powers that no other species possessed, the right to veto any military action, the authority to investigate any threat to galactic peace, the responsibility to ensure that what happened to New Geneva never happened again. Around the table sat representatives from dozens of species. Some were familiar faces from the old council. Others were new delegates, sent by governments that had been restructured after the war. All of them watched Elena carefully, respectfully. They had learned to take human concerns very seriously. The Council recognizes Ambassador Vasquez of the Human Federation, announced the ethereal communion representative who served as council moderator. His voice carried the weight of ancient wisdom, but also the careful deference that all species now showed toward humanity. Elena stood slowly. 6 months had passed since the war ended. 6 months of rebuilding, restructuring, and establishing the new order that would govern the galaxy. It had been difficult work, made harder by the knowledge that humanity had never wanted this responsibility. "Thank you, moderator," Elena said. "Today we finalize the Galactic Peace Accords. These agreements will ensure that the tragedy that befell New Geneva is never repeated." She activated her data tablet and the main display showed the terms that had been negotiated over months of careful discussion. Unlike the peace talks that had failed so catastrophically before the war, these negotiations were different. Everyone understood that humanity was not asking for these terms. They were stating them. First, all military forces will be registered with the Galactic Peace Commission. No species will maintain fleets larger than necessary for local defense. Any military buildup beyond these limits will trigger immediate human intervention. The Zephyrian delegate, a young diplomat named Kex Luna who had replaced the entire previous government, nodded quickly. Her species had learned what human intervention meant. They had no desire to experience it again. Second, all territorial disputes will be resolved through mediation, not warfare. Any species that chooses violence over diplomacy will face the combined response of the Galactic Defense Force. The Galactic Defense Force was humanity's creation. Ships and personnel from multiple species, but commanded by human officers and guided by human strategic doctrine. It existed to ensure that smaller conflicts never escalated into galactic wars. Third, trade and colonization rights will be protected for all peaceful species. No one will be denied access to resources or territory based on military weakness. This was perhaps the most revolutionary change. Before the war, strong species had taken what they wanted from weaker ones. Now, humanity guaranteed that peaceful species would be protected from aggression. The galaxy's bullies had been neutered. These accords are not negotiations, Elena continued. They are the terms under which galactic civilization will operate. Any species that finds these terms unacceptable is free to leave galactic space and establish their own territory beyond our borders. The chamber was silent. Every delegate understood what she was really saying. Accept humanity's rules for peace, or face humanity's capacity for war. There was no third option. Admiral Marcus Chun watched the council proceedings from the observation gallery above the main chamber. He no longer wore his military uniform. Officially, the war was over and he had returned to civilian life. But everyone knew that he remained ready to resume command if the galaxy's peace was threatened. "Do you think it will work?" asked Captain Kim, who sat beside him. She had also officially retired, though, like Marcus, she remained on call for emergency situations. Marcus considered the question. Below them, alien delegates were formally accepting humanity's terms for galactic civilization. Species that had once been enemies now pledged to work together under human oversight. It looked like peace, but was it real peace or just fear? "It will work as long as people remember why we had to create it," Marcus said finally. "The moment someone forgets what happens when they attack human civilians, we'll have to remind them." The truth was that humanity had become something they never wanted to be: the galaxy's police force. Not through conquest or ambition, but through necessity. Someone had to ensure that wars like this never happened again. And humanity was the only species with both the capability and the moral authority to do it. On the planet's surface, in the rebuilt human embassy, Elena's aide brought her the final casualty reports from the war. The numbers still made her heart ache. 40,000 dead at New Geneva. Another 15,000 human military personnel who had died fighting to ensure their species' survival. Hundreds of thousands of alien military casualties. All of it could have been prevented if the original peace talks had succeeded. All of it was the price of someone choosing war over diplomacy. "Ambassador, the memorial service is ready," her aide reported. "The families are assembled?" Elena nodded and made her way to the embassy's memorial garden. Here, families of the war dead had gathered to remember those who would never come home. Human families who had lost loved ones at New Geneva and in the fighting that followed. Even some alien families whose relatives had died in the human counterattack. Elena approached the podium overlooking the memorial wall. Carved into black stone were the names of every human who had died in the war. At the center, larger than the rest, were the names of the 40,000 civilians who had been killed while their leaders tried to make peace. "We gather today to remember those who paid the price for our freedom," Elena began. "They died because others chose violence over words, war over peace, hatred over hope." She looked out at the assembled families. Parents who had lost children. Children who had lost parents. The human cost of the galaxy's failure to embrace peace when it was offered freely. "Their sacrifice was not in vain," Elena continued. "Because of their deaths, we have built a galaxy where such tragedies cannot happen again. Because they died, others will live in peace." After the ceremony, Elena walked alone through the embassy gardens. The sun was setting over Nexus Prime, casting long shadows across the alien city. In the distance, she could see ships from dozens of species coming and going from the spaceport. Trade vessels, diplomatic couriers, passenger liners, all of them traveling safely through space that was now protected by human military might. Her communication device chimed softly. A message from Earth, from President Martinez himself. "Elena, the Senate has approved your nomination for Secretary General of the Galactic Peace Commission. Congratulations. No one has done more to build this new order." Elena smiled sadly. Secretary General of an organization that existed only because diplomacy had failed. A position that gave her authority over galactic civilization because someone had forced humanity to take that authority by violence. She walked to her office and composed her acceptance speech. Tomorrow, she would officially become the most powerful diplomat in galactic history. Not because humanity sought power, but because someone had to ensure that peace treaties meant something years later. When new species joined the galactic community, they would learn about the peace accords from their first day of diplomatic training. They would study the Battle of Kepler Junction in their military academies. They would visit the memorial at New Geneva to understand why humanity held such a unique position in galactic affairs. Most importantly, they would learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their tactics or their industrial capacity. It was their ability to choose restraint when they could have chosen conquest. Their willingness to protect others' freedom instead of expanding their own territory. The galaxy had tested humanity's commitment to peace and found it stronger than anyone imagined. But they had also discovered what happened when that commitment was betrayed. The lesson was carved in stone at memorials across human space. Peace failed. Remember why? Elena stood at her office window, looking out at the city lights of Nexus Prime. Ships moved between the stars, carrying trade goods and passengers and diplomatic messages. Children played in parks while their parents worked at jobs that had nothing to do with warfare. Beings from dozens of species lived and worked together in harmony. It was the galaxy that humanity had always wanted to build. A galaxy where conflicts were resolved through words instead of weapons, where no child had to fear that their home would be attacked while diplomats pretended to make peace. The only difference was that now everyone understood the true cost of that peace. It was protected not by hope or good intentions, but by the knowledge that humanity would do whatever was necessary to preserve it. Peace had failed once. Under humanity's watch, it would never fail again.